Kenichi Shirahama is your average high school student facing endless bullying and humiliation. He tried karate to fend off his bullies, but that didn't save him from more beatings. With no pals at school, he's always nose deep in self-help books. However, his life takes a dramatic turn when he befriends the new girl at school and joins the dojo run by her grandfather. One fine day, he rushes late for class and accidentally collides with a girl, who mistakes him for an attacker and throws him on the ground. She quickly apologizes and helps him gather his scattered books. Kenichi shouts at her for attacking him, but she explains her reflexes kicked in when he bumped her. Running together to school, she confidently jumps over a river and encourages him to do the same, but he ends up falling in, and she has to rescue him. Upon arriving to school, he is made to stand outside for being late, while the girl is called in and introduced to the class as Furenji Miu. When he hears that she came from a prestigious school to this place, he questions her intelligence. To prove his point, she introduces herself to the class and informs the teacher that she will join Kenichi outside as a punishment for also being late. Outside the class, she thanks him for his help, even though she had saved him, and asks if he would like to be her friend. He couldn't believe his luck. It seemed like the tips from his books on making friends were finally paying off. After class, Kenichi rushes to the karate club as usual, but a weird-looking boy called Nijima stops him and starts bullying him. He calls him a coward and asks about Furenji, but when he doesn't get the answer he was expecting, he resorts to physically attacking Kenichi. At the karate club, he gets beaten up badly, and everyone makes fun of him, calling him a loser. When the club ends, he's made to do all the cleaning. After finishing his chore, he starts practicing on a punching bag, but a bulky guy called Daemonji stops him and punches him in the gut, saying that he doesn't deserve to be in this club since he's weak. Daemonji threatens him to quit the club, but Kenichi asks if he can continue if he becomes strong enough. In response, Daemonji mocks him, challenging him to a match after a week, where the loser has to quit the club. Later, on his way home, he reads a book about becoming strong and daydreams about becoming a hero, fighting against villains. Suddenly, he sees some thugs troubling Furenji and an old man. Instead of being the hero, Kenichi runs away like a chicken. He scolds himself for running away when she, who is supposed to be his friend, is in trouble. Overcome with guilt, he returns to the scene to try and stop the bad guys. Blindly throwing punches, he hopes one will land on them, but when it does, it has no impact. Angered by this, they grab him and bring out a knife. Before they can do anything, Furenji swiftly intervenes and defeats the attackers with ease. The thugs retreat and she thanks Kenichi again for no reason, calling him brave. She expresses her pleasure at having him as her first friend, and he tells her about his experiences at the karate club. Hearing this, she explains that karate was founded for the weak to stand up against bullies, not the other way around. She advises him to seek a place to train in martial arts and become stronger. Taking her advice, Kenichi arrives at the place with the help of a map she drew for him. He tries to push open the door, but nothing happens. Suddenly, a large old man appears and effortlessly opens the door with a push of his finger, startling Kenichi. Panicking, he rushes to leave. The old guy stops him. Kenichi asks if the old guy is the master of martial arts, but the old man, thinking he is being humble, denies it, saying he has never lost a fight in his life. Amazed, Kenichi tells him that Furenji sent him here, and upon hearing this, the old guy takes him inside. They encounter a man named Akisame who is vigorously practicing his punching skills, and upon noticing Kenichi, he gets excited and shows off his skills by punching walls and whatnot. They continue with the tour when he comes across a girl in a room. He finds her cute, but he's shocked when she cleanly cuts off all the blades with a single swipe of her sword. She attacks someone for trying to take pictures of her, and one of her ninja stars almost hits Kenichi, but the old guy stops it and warns him not to go poking around. He is then introduced to someone named Sakaki for his training, but Sakaki doesn't seem interested in taking him as a disciple. He shows off his deadly moves and warns him that if Kenichi trains with him, he'll be dead in 3 days. Not wanting to die so soon, Kenichi prepares to leave, thinking the dojo is weird. However, when he sees another formidable man, he passes out and faints. To his surprise, Furenji wakes him up and asks if he's alright. He tells her to leave with him, considering the place dangerous. But she refuses and shocks him by revealing that this place is her home, and the old guy is none other than her grandfather. He introduces Kenichi to a group of skilled martial artists and explains about this place known as Ryozanpaku. Among them are Shio Sakaki, the karate fighter, Apachai, a master of secret Muay Thai boxing, Kensai Ma, proficient in various Chinese martial arts, Akisame Kotsuji, a warrior philosopher, and Shigeru Kosaka, skilled in swordplay and weapon handling. The grandfather then introduces himself as the head of the house, and all this information is making Kenichi very uneasy. Instead of rescuing him this time, Furenji excuses herself and steps away to make tea, leaving him all alone with these fighters. They assess him, wondering why she brought him here, likening it to a girl wanting to rescue a butterfly. and they speculate on whether Kenichi will back out from the challenge. The elder addresses him directly, asking if he's ready to join them at Ryozanpaku. He hesitates initially, then nods affirmatively, as joining them might help him become stronger. The Chinese martial arts guy, Kensei, hands him a form to fill out with his personal details and asks him to pay $200 monthly. Upon seeing him upset at the amount, Kensei brings it down to $100 and eventually to $50. It seems all they want is money, and they don't care how much as long as they get it. Just then, Furinji comes back with tea for everyone and starts serving all the masters. The elder justifies the fees and tells Kenichi that they are facing financial hardship, and it's only due to Furinji's exceptional bookkeeping skills that they've managed to stay afloat during this crisis. After hearing about her other responsibilities in this household, he imagines them treating her like a servant and resolves to come here daily, at least to protect her. The elder appoints Akisame as Kenichi's master, since he has some teaching experience and known for his relatively tempered approach, was deemed the least likely among them to jeopardize Kenichi's life during the training process. Kenichi is already getting scared for his life and starts regretting his decision. Without wasting any time, Akisame asks him about his martial arts experience, and he admits his lack of any experience and tells him about being bullied at school. Akisame assures him that jujutsu can empower him for self-defense and promises not to be an overly strict instructor. But he gets the shock of his life when the training begins, an endurance test in which he has to carry large jars while maintaining his balance. If he falters even slightly, needles will poke him and he will get burned from beneath. He wonders if this is the easy level and the harder ones must be life-threatening. Imagining training with the other masters alone fills him with fear for his life. He lets out a pained scream when he falters and needles pierce his skin. Akisame allows him a moment of a break before giving him another task as part of his training. Kenichi has to carry Akisame while running a distance of 3 train stops to a park. His protests are met only with stern encouragement from Akisame in the form of beatings and scoldings. After this, he is instructed to take a rest, but he is left so exhausted that he can barely walk and considers quitting. However, he changes his mind after seeing Furinji and decides to come back. The following day marks the true beginning of his training. He has to walk between posts while carrying huge jars of water. He asks Akisame when he will truly learn jujutsu instead of doing all this muscle training, but Akisame tells him that he has to improve his strength first. He explains that no matter the technique, an ant can't defeat an elephant with its strength, but takes back the comparison to an ant and says ants are stronger than him. Unable to tolerate this humiliation, Kenichi wants to quit, but Akisame reminds him of the strength ants possess, inspiring him to persevere. Seeing that Akisame has a disciple, the boxer Apakai volunteers to train him as well, and Kenichi is pushed to his limits. The elder finds this amusing and tells him to be grateful for being trained by many masters. Meanwhile, Furinji hears about Daimoji's plan to take Kenichi's life if he participates in their challenge. Wanting to help, she meets him at park later to teach him some techniques. She demonstrates the techniques by intertwining her toes, a move called kuvo, and then pivoting outside known as haiho. However, he doesn't understand a thing. So she encourages him to attack her, guiding him through the technique involving footwork and movement. Although he initially refuses to attack her due to his male pride, he quickly learns that gender has nothing to do with learning and follows her instructions. Initially struggling with the movement, he gains insight and improves as she motivates him, emphasizing that progress demands determination and effort. The next day, Furinji waits for him to go to school and wonders why he is late. Soon she sees Kenichi walking towards her while practicing the stepping techniques she taught him yesterday. He tells her that although he started early because he is walking this way, he came late and asks her to go ahead without him. But she refuses, asserting her role as a supportive friend and walks with him to class patiently. His progress is put to the test when he enters the karate club to face Daimonji's challenge to a match. The duel commences and he finds himself struggling against Daimonji's attacks. Drawing on Furinji's teachings, he manages to evade Daimonji's assault. He continues dodging attacks and his determination shines through as he employs the new technique, causing Daimonji to stumble and fall. Kenichi is declared the winner despite Daimonji's protests, claiming he used a restricted throwing move. Daimonji is asked to leave the club as per his earlier conditions, but Kenichi steps in and admits to using restricted moves to gain an advantage and accepts defeat instead. He leaves the karate club disappointed yet proud of his efforts. Nijima meets him outside and praises him for putting up a good fight. He proceeds to leave, but Kenichi stops him and thanks him. Nijima then reveals a key piece of information. The referee in today's match called Tsukuba is eager to fight him to test his skills. Kenichi starts to panic as Tsukuba is the top fighter in the karate club and contemplates his fate. Nijima mocks him, saying he will be finished in no time and leaves laughing psychotically. The next day at school, 2 guys find Furinji cute and try to befriend her. However, they are shocked when she ignores them and goes to converse with Kenichi, who seems to be depressed about the events of yesterday. Unaware of his mood, she shares with him that she joined the gymnastic club and asks which club he joined since he is no longer in karate. In response, he tells her with great embarrassment that he joined the gardening club and proceeds to wallow in pity, heading off to water plants. However, she stops him, finally recognizing his mood, and wonders what to do about him. Just then, Niijima interrupts and introduces himself to her as Kenichi's best friend. Believing it to be true, she introduces herself, much to the jealousy of her classmates. He heads off, saying he will meet her later in gym class, while poor Kenichi seems to be forgotten. During the class, Tsukuba makes noise by crushing a walnut, so the teacher asks him to be quiet. Upon seeing him crush the walnut with ease, the teacher becomes scared and ignores his behavior. He continues crushing walnuts and questions whether Kenichi's display of strength was intentional or a lucky fluke. Later, Niijima informs Furinji that Tsukuba is planning to fight Kenichi, emphasizing that Tsukuba can break stones barehanded. Meanwhile, Kenichi sits shivering and visibly panicked at the thought of facing him. She confuses that Tsukuba must be a black belt for such strength. At Ryozanpaku, Kenichi waters plants plagued by thoughts of the impending fight that fill him with fear. Recognizing his anxiety, Akisame begins his training to address it. He's made to run like a horse while carrying Akisame, and Kensai provides lessons on leg-strengthening exercises, emphasizing the importance of strong legs in martial arts. Apakai attempts to demonstrate his warm-up routine to Kenichi, but Kenichi flees from the scene. Sakaki confronts Furinji about the technique she taught him and tells her that although she taught him to help him win against the bully, this will only attract stronger opponents who now want to test Kenichi. She is shocked that Sakaki could predict what is happening and realizes that the reason why the masters haven't taught him any techniques is because of this very reason. Sakaki informs her that Kenichi lacks basic core strength, and because of her, he is going to have trouble with other students. To prove his point, Kenichi is sent flying by an excited Apakai and ends up severely injured. He is woken up by his sister at home and he starts rambling, thinking that he passed away and is in heaven. She corrects him and expresses her concern about his well-being. At dinner, his father questions him about his frequent injuries and asks if he really joined a legitimate dojo. He admits it is not legitimate and dismisses the idea of legitimacy. He runs away to his room and his sister follows him, exclaiming that he is being bullied in the dojo as well. Determined to protect his son, his father takes a gun, but Kenichi's mother reassures him that Kenichi's willingness to stand up without backing down is a sign of his determination and that he should have faith in his son for choosing this dojo. The next day, Kenichi and Furinji scale the school fence in an attempt to evade Tsukuba, and she observes that he is getting tougher every day. In the gymnastics class, a girl named Takashima receives praise for her performance, but when Furinji demonstrates her flexibility during stretch-ups, everyone praises her instead. Seeing this, Takashima becomes jealous and challenges her to perform. She takes a deep breath and showcases her exceptional gymnastic abilities. Everyone praises her, while Takashima wallows in jealousy. They hail her as a master and express their desire to be taught by her. Meanwhile, Kenichi is sneaking around the locker room in an attempt to evade Tsukuba's sight, but as luck would have it, Tsukuba comes upon him from behind and startles him. Tsukuba takes him outside and asks him to fight, but he pleads to be let go. Tsukuba mocks him, calling him a coward, which provokes him to accept the challenge. Kenichi is overpowered and beaten up badly by Tsukuba. Despite the defeat, he refuses to give up and holds Tsukuba's leg tightly. Tsukuba kicks him to let go, and he eventually withdraws after getting exhausted, and Tsukuba notices that he got a bruise from Kenichi's strong grip on him. Furinji returns home to find Kenichi there and inquires about his injuries, but he tells her that he fell from the stairs and leaves. Sakaki informs her that many men hesitate to express their suffering to women and advises her to let him be. Akisame tends to Kenichi's wounds and he laments losing despite his hard work. Akisame inquires about his intentions and he expresses his desire to confront Tsukuba and make him acknowledge his strength and courage. Akisame reassures him and informs him that his technique training will commence the next day. Kenichi's desires make him reflect on the words he once spoke to his own master, emphasizing the importance of his belief in justice. After learning that Kenichi can train in techniques tomorrow, Apache declares his readiness to help him, but Akisame cautions him about understanding his limits. But Apakai ignores this and remains enthusiastic about taking Kenichi as his first disciple. The following day, Akisame brings a creepy-looking Buddha statue and informs Kenichi that he is going to teach a technique called the Throwing Deity Great. Kenichi is asked to throw the statue, but he finds it too difficult to lift. Akisame instructs him to focus on the center of gravity and explains that if he can break his opponent's balance, then he can easily overthrow them. Next, he receives instruction from Kensei, who demonstrates a counterattack technique with the help of Furinji. He practices this technique, But when Apachai comes to teach him, he flees. However, Shiger catches him and hands him over to Apachai like a piece of meat. Reluctantly, he accepts his fate and puts on the boxing gloves, scared for his life. At the start, the training goes smoothly with him punching Apachai, but when Apachai asks him to dodge his punch, Kenichi collapses from the impact. His training intensifies as he practices the throwing deity great technique and the counterattack technique. Every time he throws the statue to the ground, the next time proves to be more difficult instead of easier. All this time, Sakaki watches over his training from afar and starts to take a liking towards him. He praises Kenichi for lasting more than 3 days there and tells him to observe the statue. Kenichi suddenly realizes that this statue is slightly bigger than the previous one, and soon he finds a room full of Buddha statues with varying sizes that Akisame has been switching deceptively. Taking pity on him, Sakaki offers to make an exception that day and teach him a technique. He questions Kenichi about his opponent's karate style, but he tells him that he doesn't know. Sakaki first gets angry at his reply, but soon becomes gentle with him and asks him to demonstrate Tsukuba's fighting stance, which he does. Sakaki tells him that Tsukuba has a sports karate style and offers to show a technique that will defeat Tsukuba for sure. Shiger and Akisame are surprised that Sakaki is teaching someone. Later at school, Furinji finds Tsukuba beating up a guy and intervenes. When Tsukuba touches her, she hits him. Seeing her skills, he asks her to fight him. But Kenichi suddenly appears with his manly pride and stops her from fighting and instead challenges Tsukuba on her behalf. She warns Kenichi that he isn't strong enough to fight Tsukuba, but he refuses to let go of his pride. The fight begins and Kenichi recollects the technique that Sakaki taught him. He goes to attack Tsukuba's face but ends up punching him in the gut with his other hand. This technique is called the Yamazuki of Basai, which works perfectly against sports karate-style players like Shukabaka. Kenichi recalls Sakaki's words about people generally having a fear of being hit in the face and advises him to use this to his advantage by targeting other areas when they cover their face. Tsukuba becomes angry and charges forward, but Kenichi uses the special counterattack technique that Kensei had taught him and finally employs the throwing Buddha technique to throw Tsukuba to the ground. Compared to the statues, Tsukuba is much lighter and gets easily overthrown by Kenichi, resulting in his defeat. Kenichi rushes to him and checks if he is alive, letting out a sigh of relief upon finding him breathing. Furinji finds this cute and giggles playfully at him for caring about his opponent's well-being instead of his own. Back at the dojo, he proudly announces that he won against Tsukuba, but Sakaki tells him that he is yet to face the difficult part and that he will find out about it soon. The next day at school, Kenichi gets suspicious when everyone around him seems to be afraid of him, and he shares this with Furinji. It turns out Nijima was publicizing his success against Tsukuba to everyone, and Kenichi scolds him for it. However, she supports Nijima and reveals that it was she who told him about Kenichi in exchange for 2 bowls of noodles. Just then, they see some thugs searching for him, and he quickly hides behind Nijima like a chicken. It turns out the thugs are part of a gang called Ragnarok and are searching for Kenichi to challenge him after hearing about his success against Tsukuba. After the thugs leave, Nijima scares him by suggesting that they probably know where he lives and won't stop until they find him. Kenichi starts panicking and becomes scared for his life once again. At the dojo, Kenichi is overwhelmed with fear about the impending fight and confides in the masters. However, they remain nonchalant and remark that he should have anticipated that something like this would happen. It's then that he realizes that they already knew that his fight with Tsukuba would attract attention. Sakaki tells him not to be a chicken and to see it through, encouraging him to become the strongest in the school. At school, the thugs are actively searching for him, but he manages to escape and takes refuge in the gardening club. There he meets a girl called Izumi, who questions Kenichi's motives for joining the gardening club. He explains his interest in flowers and his enjoyment of watering plants. She brings up the rumors surrounding him, but he declines, saying that he isn't that strong. Suddenly, Nijima enters the scene and Kenichi, agitated by the rumors he has spread, scolds him and throws him out of the club. Nijima complains about being unappreciated and leaves before mentioning that he came to inform Kenichi about those thugs who are looking for him. Back at the dojo, Kenichi's training with Apachai leaves him exhausted. The other masters ask Apachai to finish training him quicker so that they can take their turn with him. Seeing that the masters are fighting over him, he asks if he has some hidden talent in martial arts. However, they burst his bubble and tell him that he has no talent. Unable to bear the shame, Kenichi contemplates ending his life, but Furinji intervenes and tries to stop him. Sakaki assures him that practice will never betray him and breaks a bottle to demonstrate how he can do the same to his opponent's chin or jaw. Sakaki's words motivate him, and he practices by punching a wooden pole. The masters devise a plan concerning Kenichi and Furinji and asks him to go on a date with her that Sunday. They give him movie tickets and instruct him to complete his workouts and training beforehand. He happily agrees and continues to practice enthusiastically. Several days pass, and the plan seems to be working great as Kenichi goes through all his training with the prospect of going out with her fueling his determination. On the day of their date, they take the metro to the movie theater, and Furinji reveals that this will be her first time watching a movie in a theater. Suddenly, they spot Nijima, who greets them, but Kenichi drags her and gets off the train, wanting to go to the theater alone with her. Anticipating that Nijima might be waiting for them at the next station, he suggests that they walk to the theater. They finally arrive at the theater, and to his horror, Nijima is already there waiting for him. So he suggests that they go to a restaurant instead. She hesitates, not wanting to waste the tickets, so he starts acting like he is hungry and proceeds to eat the ticket to prove his point. They go to a restaurant to eat, and there she reveals that it's her first time eating fast food too. He thinks back to all the work and responsibility she has at her home and decides to make this day memorable for her. After eating, they explore the streets, play fun games, and interact with a cat. Later, they go to an amusement park, and she reveals that it's her first time there as she is always training and never gets to do normal teenage stuff. She expresses her wish to ride the merry-go-round, and they get on it. She sees a little girl and waves at her, and upon seeing her happy, he becomes happy as well. They finally head to the theater as per her request, although Kenichi isn't keen on going as he thinks Nijima might still be there. But when they arrive at the theater, they hear alarming sounds nearby and go to investigate. There, they witness Nijima being attacked by a group of thugs. Kenichi suggests that they leave and go to the theater, but Furinji insists that they help Nijima. He thinks back to the time when he made a promise to help the weak if he can and goes to face the thugs to rescue Nijima. Drawing strength from Sakaki's words about practice, he confronts the thugs and kicks one, who then collapses on the ground. Nijima takes this opportunity to exaggerate his martial arts prowess to intimidate them. Furinji questions him about how the thugs knew they were there, and Nijima reveals that a Chinese guy with a hat, who happens to be Kensei, was handing out Kenichi's activity schedule to the thugs. Later, Kenichi confronts Kensei about this, who tells him that this was actually Akisame's idea. He complains that because of them, he now has a target on his back. Akisame describes his idea as a carrot-and-stick strategy and reveals their intent to use Furinji as his motivational backbone. Kenichi voices his concerns about involving her, but the masters explain that this approach is known as tough love. Sakaki elaborates that Kenichi must eventually face the gang, so he should be prepared to encounter them at all times. Furinji suggests that they seek advice from her grandfather regarding this matter. The elder shares his own experiences of being bullied and the eventual repercussions for his tormentors, encouraging him to brace for future challenges as more adversaries will come his way. The next day, Kenichi secretly admires Furinji's impressive gymnastic skills during her session. As the session goes on, Takashima hurls a stick at her in an attempt to make her trip, but she catches it gracefully with her ribbon, earning praise from everyone present. At home, Kenichi informs his family that from now on he'll be spending the nights at the dojo on weekends and proceeds to leave. His dad is not happy about his decision, and his sister worries about him, thinking he is going to be beaten up at night as well. His dad thinks that he is being brainwashed by some evil dojo members and takes out his gun, but he returns home tired and injured. His mother encourages his sister to visit him and hands her a box of medicine to give to Kenichi. At the dojo, Kenichi, determined to intensify his training, dons his karate outfit and observes the masters in their training with admiration. However, when he approaches Shigeru and asks about her plan, she leaves without responding. Akisame informs him that for the next 2 days, he has to engage in rigorous training and introduces a device he developed called the Great Leg Sprinter. This device is designed to enhance a person's flexibility, a crucial aspect of martial arts. Akisame asks Furinji to assist him. As she pushes the device, it widens Kenichi's legs, causing him to shout in pain, expressing his inability to endure it any longer. Akisame explains that the device is meant to gradually achieve a 180-degree leg split after 16 hours, and that if he wishes to stop, he should use a safe word. Furinji continues to push the device, and Kenichi's screams continue, but he starts to relax a bit as she assists him in achieving the split. Suddenly, Kenichi's sister barges in, having observed his struggles in secret. Her entrance causes Furinji to fall onto Kenichi, accidentally making him perform the 180-degree split before he could use his safe word. His sister tries to embrace him, but he pushes her away, unable to bear the pain. Akisame intervenes and checks on Kenichi's condition. He kicks Kenichi's leg, miraculously relieving the pain. Akisame reveals his background in acupuncture and assures Kenichi that he can break as many bones as he wants, since he's there to mend them. When Kenichi introduces his sister to Furinji, she comments on how cute she is, but his sister accuses Furinji of toying with her brother's emotions. She urges Kenichi to come home with her and attempts to drag him by his hands, but he breaks free and stays back at the dojo. His sister becomes upset and hands over the gift her mother gave to Furinji before leaving. Furinji mentions that Kenichi is fortunate to have a sister, so he inquires about her family. She sadly tells him that her parents are gone and that her grandfather is all she has left before leaving. The masters tease him, suggesting that he hurt her emotionally. He reflects on her talent and speculates that her tragic past might have compelled her into martial arts during her childhood. Overwhelmed with emotions, he decides to apologize to her, but he is intersected by Akisame, who hands him over at Apachai for further training. Shiga returns and inquires about Kenichi, who is battered and bruised from his training session with Apachai. The elder asks if she's concerned, but she replies that she isn't and leaves. He reflects on Kenichi's positive impact on everyone since his arrival. At dinner, Kenichi is surprised to see that Furinji has prepared a variety of dishes. He asks why Shiger hasn't joined them for dinner, and Furinji explains that Shiger prefers to eat alone. As he's about to eat, the masters steal his food, leaving him with nothing to eat. Later in the night, feeling hungry, he receives a meal served by Furinji on the rooftop exclusively for him. This gives him the opportunity to apologize to her, and she accepts his apology, mentioning that she isn't sad anymore. Curious about each other's aspirations, she asks him about his dreams, and he reveals his desire to become a novelist. In return, he asks her about her own dreams, to which she claims they are a secret. However, Shiger reveals Furinji's aspiration to become a beautiful bride by reading a letter she had written a couple of years back. Embarrassed, Furinji tries to snatch the letter from Shiger, who leaves the scene. She then expresses her wish for him to be her best friend forever. While he is saddened by the fact that he can't be her boyfriend, he acknowledges that their current friendship is for the best. A few days later, at the gardening club, Kenichi is engrossed in watering the plants. Izumi notices his lively demeanor and comments on it. He explains that the club is his only safe haven from the thug group and martial art masters. He recalls the intense training he endured in the dojo, but remains resolute about not quitting the club because of Furinji. She playfully remarks that despite the rumors of him being the strongest and meanest boy in school, he is quite good-natured. He dispels these rumors, attributing them to Nijima. Curious, she asks about his favorite plant, which he affectionately calls the Snowman King, and he expresses his concern about its slow growth. Meanwhile, Nijima is spying on them from outside and thinks to himself that there is no way Kenichi is going to survive against the thugs, as he had witnessed their brutal attacks earlier. At the dojo, Kenichi practices his punching, but Sakaki corrects his posture and demonstrates how to properly punch by breaking a wall with his bare hands. Kenichi says that he can't be like him as he doesn't have huge muscles. Sakaki tells him not to make excuses and calls for Furinji to demonstrate. He explains that in terms of muscle strength alone, she is weaker than him and asks her to showcase her punches. She displays her prowess by executing 6 strong and precise punches per second, leaving Kenichi shocked. Sakaki explains the nuances of karate styles, nahat, which emphasizes muscle strength, and shurite, which focuses on the speed of fists when striking. He tells Kenichi that he should eventually master both styles, but for now, he should start with shurite and focus on speed. Kensai interrupts them and declares that it's his turn to teach Kenichi. He demonstrates an arm-swinging movement and encourages Kenichi to practice it in the neighborhood while he indulges in reading a somewhat inappropriate book. As Kenichi practices the peculiar swinging arm movement in the streets, onlookers make fun of him, causing him embarrassment. However, despite this, he takes the exercise seriously and persists. Witnessing his determination, Furinji joins him as well. She tells him that this is an exercise to loosen his muscles and explains that when he swings his arm forcefully in one direction, it also engages strength in the opposite direction. They continue conversing while performing the exercise when, unexpectedly, they encounter a thug from the Ragnarok group. The thug introduces himself as Taichi and targets Furinji, declaring his intention to make her his girlfriend by defeating Kenichi. Furious at his audacity, she reacts strongly, but he responds with maniacal laughter. Taichi's friends surround Kenichi and Furinji, effectively trapping them and making escape seemingly impossible. But to their luck, Sakaki appears out of nowhere and intervenes. Thinking that this is the perfect time to train Kenichi, he instructs him about the importance of proper stance before stepping away for him to deal with the thugs. Seeing Sakaki leave, Taichi initiates an attack on Kenichi, causing him to fall. Furious, Furinji breaks free from the thug's grasp and fights them back. Kenichi realizes he made a mistake by moving too slowly and tries to counter Taichi's attack, but it fails. So he employs Kensei's swing arm movement and defeats him, leaving him disoriented. Unable to accept his defeat, Taichi asks the rest to attack him, but Furinji defeats them all and apologizes to him for not saving him a few of the thugs. Scared, Taichi flees the scene, calling her a monster, and Kenichi tries to console her. At the dojo, Sakaki praises him for his victory and asks if his training helped him against the thugs. Kenichi replies that it was indeed helpful, but he privately acknowledges that it was actually Kensei's technique that allowed him to land a lucky hit on Teichi's chin. Sakaki then informs him that Apachai is upset with him for missing his training session that day. He goes to Apachai to apologize and explains the situation. The following day, Sakaki assigns Kenichi to train with Furinji and then leaves. Akisame does the same and asks him to train alongside her. He instructs him to use both offensive and defensive techniques simultaneously and introduces new elements to his training routine. During his practice session with Apachai, Kenichi attempts to evade him by throwing the Buddha statues. Seeing this, Akisame complains about the damaged statues to Kensei, and they discuss Apachai's unconventional training methods. At school, Kenichi worries about his progress in training and seeks solace in the gardening club. But when he arrives at the club, he discovers that Azumi is held captive by Daimonji and witnesses Daimonji's friends damaging plants, including his favorite plant called Snowball King. Daimonji challenges him to a fight, threatening to harm Azumi otherwise. Angered by Daimonji's actions, Kenichi swiftly evades Daimonji's kick and lands a blow to his stomach, causing him to collapse. Seeing Daimonji's friends flee the scene, Kenichi becomes upset that he couldn't save his plants and apologizes to them. However, Azumi reassures him and suggests that they restore the plant by repotting the damaged one. After a few days, much to Kenichi's surprise, Azumi shows him the Snowball King plant and tells him that it has survived. He becomes extremely happy and reflects on the plant's deep roots and gradual growth, realizing that it parallels his own martial arts journey. He recalls his recent success against Daimonji's kicks and becomes content with his progress. He vows to continue working hard so that he can become like his resilient plant, the Snowball King. At school the next day, the thugs are actively searching for him. In an attempt to evade their pursuit, Kenichi hides inside a cupboard and secretly eats the food that was delivered to him. Later, a guy named Takashi confronts him. Kenichi becomes angry that this guy interrupted his shopping plans with Furinji and decides to fight him, while she takes care of the rest of the men. Kenichi admires her skills and manages to land a blow on Takashi, injuring him. As Takashi takes out his knife to attack Kenichi, she warns him to be careful and intervenes, taking his belt to neutralize Takashi and his friends. At the dojo, the masters notice that Kenichi seems depressed since he returned from shopping. Apachai expresses concern and asks if he can go comfort him, but Sakaki denies Apachai's request, telling him to leave Kenichi alone. Kenichi goes outside and reflects on his fight with Takashi, particularly how he panicked upon seeing the knife. Shiger joins him and attempts to get his attention. When he doesn't respond, she demonstrates her skills to him. Akisame informs him that she wishes to teach him how to handle weapons and informs that she can manipulate various weapons. However, he doesn't seem to be interested in weapons, so Akisame emphasizes the importance of understanding weapons to effectively counter them. The masters, along with Furinji, attentively watch Kenichi's training session with Shiger. She informs him that they are going to start with a knife, but Furinji takes the knife from her hands and gives her a spoon instead. Shiger proceeds to use the spoon to tear his clothing as a demonstration. Hearing the commotion, the elder joins them as well and offers his insight, stating that whether it's a knife or a spoon, they are simply metal objects that are harmless unless they strike you. He explains that it doesn't matter what object Shiger is using, as she never misses her mark. The elder encourages Kenichi to calmly observe her movements and find an opening to attack. This time, they practice with paper rolls. She instructs him on proper posture through a series of hits with her paper roll, highlighting his vulnerabilities. She corrects his stance and asks him to initiate an attack. However, when he does, she effortlessly counters his moves. Despite repeated attempts, Kenichi continues to fail, eventually collapsing on the ground due to exhaustion. The elder tells him the importance of courage in combat, as it enables him to be calm and help him find his opponent's weaknesses. However, Kenichi doubts himself as he feels he is lacking in courage. The elder advises him that training is the key and tasks Shiger to push his limits. After his intense training with Shiger, he becomes exhausted and is unable to walk properly. He then sees Sakaki training and admires his physique, dreaming of possessing similar muscles. Suddenly, Akisame interrupts his thoughts and invites Kenichi to go shopping with him. However, it turns out that Kenichi is once again made to haul him like a horse as part of their routine tire workout, and their exercise continues. On the streets, Kenichi feels embarrassed before girls as they walk by making fun of him. He questions when he will graduate from basic training, but Akisame dispels the notion and tells him that there is no graduating from basic training. He explains that in the past, martial artists prioritized sparring over excessive muscle training. Akisame elaborates on the risks and benefits of building muscle only through sparring. While it enhances specific muscles necessary for fighting, it carries a higher risk of injury. When asked if he's willing to attempt it, Kenichi hesitates and says no. After finishing their shopping, they walk back to the dojo. Along the way, they come across a gang harassing two girls, one of whom is Izumi. Kenichi realizes that these are the same individuals who had bullied and fought with Furinji. The gang leader identifies Kenichi, and they surround him. Akisame asks the girls to run away and intervenes, showcasing his incredible strength by breaking the leader's bone. He subsequently mends it, explaining that he had dislocated the bone by mistake. The gang leader instructs his men to fetch their chief and gather more weapons. Soon, the chief arrives, a massive figure donning a comical mask. A showdown between Akisame and the chief unfolds, during which Akisame demonstrates his incredible combat prowess and imparts valuable techniques to Kenichi. As the situation intensifies, the gang leader draws a gun and aims it at Akisame. Confidently, he approaches the gang leader and pulls him by his head, separating their fight to ensure the safety of passersby. Kenichi is astonished by his sensei's skills and stealthily observes their fight. What he witnesses both terrifies and impresses him about Akisame, leading him to vow to keep the incident a secret and not reveal it to anyone. Later, Kenichi confides in Sakaki about Akisame's strength and learns about 3 different muscle types in the human body: white muscle for speed, red muscle for endurance, and pink muscle for a balanced combination of both attributes. Sakaki reveals to him that Akisame defied conventional training wisdom and underwent bizarre training for 20 years to transform all his muscles into pink muscle. Afterward, Kenichi prepares to leave home, but Furinji worries about him. He reassures her and tells her not to worry. However, on his way home, he encounters Takashi, who is armed with a knife and ready to fight him. He recalls the elder's words that whether it's a knife or a spoon, they are just metals as long as they don't hit him. Using this newfound understanding, he disarms Takashi by mocking him and kicking the knife away when he sees an opportunity. He then remembers Akisame's advice on targeting opponents' vital points to throw them off balance and proceeds to strike Takashi's face. While Takashi is disoriented, Kenichi rambles about his pitiful life and the rigorous training he undergoes at the dojo. Meanwhile, Furinji observes him in secret, finding relief and happiness in Kenichi's newfound resolve.